Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Disarming Discourse with me, Marriam Kaiwan. What is the true measure of a society? Is it the wealth, the military power, the cultural significance, historical achievements? Or is it something far more fundamental? I believe that the very basics of how you measure a society lies in how a society treats its most vulnerable, especially the children. As we speak, even right now, there are millions of children trapped in a situation of profound suffering. They are victims of violence, caught in between broken justice systems, waiting for someone to rescue them. Sometimes we look at all these things in the news headlines, but then often we look away. Because for us, the problem is too big, it's complicated, it's too distant. Even if we feel like doing something, we do not know where to start from. So we feel that sadness, but then we don't know what to do. What if I tell you that the solution is not a single magic bullet, but in fact, it's about how you look at things from a bigger perspective? What if I tell you that education, violence, justice, child protection, all these are the threads of the same puzzle? And if you try to pull it from one end, you might be able to unravel the bigger problem, the bigger picture. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been joined in the studio by this Wonder Woman who has dedicated her life in doing exactly this. Her name is Valerie Khan. Welcome, Valerie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So Valerie is a development professional whose work spans from around 28 to 30 years now and across different regions from South Asia to Sub-Sahara and Middle East. She has a sharp razor eye on child protection. She talks about human rights. She talks about rule of law. She has been an educationist. She is sensitized when it comes to child labor, and she talks about gender equality. Valerie, it's an absolute privilege to have you in the studio.
Thank you. Thank you.
First of all, 28 to 30 years is not a short span of time. It's a big time. What was that driving force, that determining factor that made you come towards this side?
So I think it does stem from a childhood background and an educational background where you certainly were exposed to, I would say on one side, the culture of human rights and enlightened philosophers. That's for one. And then as you mentioned, I have been an educationist. And so within the field, when you teach children, you also see a lot, as you say, unravel in front of your eyes. And then there is also, so that part is maybe a rational explanation. And then you have the mysterious factor, the one that you don't control, which is about meeting people, having the right, what a French writer, poet, Baudelaire used to say, the correspondences, where you meet people, have synergies and things happen, and you say, okay, this is a sign and I cannot miss that call or that opportunity. And I had that in terms of being offered position into the field of some NGOs working for child rights, child protection, in 2009. And that's how I shifted to that field.
Right. So a lot of people, they step into this domain, but then it's so demanding. And of course, you get to see so much that they feel like stepping out. They do not stay in the field for so long. But the fact that you've been able to stick to that, and the fact that you've been trying to even dig deeper into more problems, more aspects, more dimensions, gets to show and say that you are a dedicated person when it comes to these causes.
Yeah, I believe so. I think in any case, I think development field and human rights work, it's not only a profession. There is certainly a professional dimension. But as I said, I think there is also a vocation, a call. And I'm not the only one. I'm not a Wonder Woman. I'm just a practitioner. But I think at the end of the day, these are the sort of professions such as, again, development of human rights. Like if you're a doctor or if you are a teacher, you need to, it's important to or rather to believe in what you do and feel motivated each day, even if it's challenging. You have coping skills that you develop, strategies to manage potential or avoid vicarious trauma, manage stress level and all this. It's not always easy. And it's not only you. I think your partner, your family
Of course,
environment, your colleague,
yes.
the entire system also
But
plays.
it does take a toll.
Certainly.
It does.
Yeah.
Okay, Valerie, you worked across different regions, so not just in one continent, in different continents. And to us on the surface level, it feels like there are some commonalities. But of course, you would be able to shed more light onto that. How is it different, or how does it vary from one region to one region? Because, for instance, if I talk about legal system, there are certain regions where there are no proper laws. Still, the post-colonial era laws, they exist. Then there's some regions where there are strict laws, but when it comes to implementation, there are some flaws. So how is it different, or how does it vary from one region to another?
Well, the normative frameworks certainly evolve. You have more, as you say, more customary practices, more positive systems as well. But I would say one aspect is that patriarchy certainly impacts all the systems wherever you are. That's for one. Secondly, gender discriminations and intersectionality of gender discrimination, and the fact that children, regardless of where they're from, are always extremely vulnerable because of their lack of agency to, discrimination, abuse, and exploitation and violence is definitely, unfortunately, a common practice. And the fact that whenever you have example of good practices, it is always because there has been synergies, partnership, multi-sectoral approach, and systemic approach, and collaboration. It's never a one-person show. It's really, I'm not saying that to be polite. It's a core reality.
So, Valerie, even if UNICEF reports, according to the UNICEF reports, there are around 1 billion people, even right now, children, who are trapped into this vicious cycle of poverty, and they're deprived of the very basic needs, what is required to survive and thrive. Why do you think there's so much work going on? There's so much development happening, but still we are stuck in this vicious cycle. What do you think is the core reason behind that?
Well, I think the world order is fundamentally not an equitable one.
Okay. Of course.
The main objective of politics should be, if you go back to, my reference would be a Greek one, and you may find another reference in another socio-cultural and anthropological framework. But if you take, I think it was Aristotle, if I'm not mistaken, who was saying that politics is about building friendship among people. Well, clearly, you look at the world situation right now, clearly we're far away from that. And why is it important? Because this is about social cohesion, does bring peace, and peace bring also, I would say, well-being and, decent life, standard of living, etc., etc. But I think at the end of the day, we need a shift in the world order that does put equality, social cohesion, peace, and humanity at the core center of its agenda. And it's interesting because I think we're very much far away from it if you look at what's happening globally from a governance perspective, but from a people's perspective, the demand has never been so high all over the planet. So it's interesting to see that kind of global dichotomy.
Okay.
And the demand for that shift, which I think they call it Gen Z,
Yes, they're demanding for that.
Exactly, are taking into their hands. So that's an interesting, in my view, narrative and debate, which is going on globally. And also, I think there is a profound lack of awareness, but also evidence demonstrating how this humanity and humanistic agenda is actually going to serve the best interest of all. Okay. All right. And that's something which needs to be made. If you look at the world, I think it's 10% of the population, which is basically owning 90% of the resources, roughly something like that. All right. Yes. Now, these 10% are probably trying to currently explore how to escape to Mars or God knows where in case of, terrible ending, right. Yes. So we also need to basically counter that. And that means that, we need to mobilize and invest. It's a business case to make, a big business case to make. But also, and by that, it means demonstrating the dividends or investing into, what we
These
call
causes.
child lens investment into these causes, how investing into children is fundamental for a prosperity. It's a slogan, but it's also an economic and a socio-economic reality, really. So I guess that's what we need to focus upon right now.
Okay, so what you're trying to say is that people are asking for a more human-centric approach. They want more investment into social causes and things like that. But then again, it's the world politics. And by world politics, we also mean a smaller segment, which is basically ruling the world order right now. And their priorities are somewhere else from the business point of view, as we always talk about that. So we can only hope that there would be a day when they would prioritize with such issues.
It's a matter of political agency, really. And it's about the youth, interestingly enough, being able to voice their new vision and their demand, and using their political and I mean
empowerment,
voting, right? Basically, to ensure that you are represented by people who understand what you actually want to happen. And there are a few countries in the world who are currently see that shift. I hope that this is going to
slowly and gradually there would be a trickle down effect. I always believe in that. And yes, you're absolutely right that instead of being send the invitations to come and sit on the tables, the youngsters, the youth has started taking things into their own hands. They're demanding for rights, and their rights are absolutely different from the rights that the world presumes that they will be asking for or demanding. You talked about patriarchal aspect. It does play a huge role in everything that we are trying to do, that you're trying to do, or the world is trying to do when it comes to child protection. So it's always about justice for children and justice with children. There was this very interesting angle that I found on your profile. Could you highlight a bit about that? How is it different and what makes it so special?
Yes. So we initially started with child justice, right? And then we shifted to justice for children, and then justice with children. I think shifting from the for to with only highlight the need to focus on what we call child participation. Justice Sayed Mansour Alisha has actually given an extraordinary decision in that regard.
Yes.
But it's really because if you want to, you see, when you make law, when you make policies, when you engage into any programming, these type of reforms need to be contextualized, localized, and to respond to your ground reality, to the need of your target group. What works in Madrid does not work necessarily in Timbuktu, etc., right?
Yes.
And so on one hand, you do rely on universal humanistic values and principles and on certain technical realities as well. But on the other hand, you need to ask the ones who face the music, who have been directly impacted and who can share the lived experience. And so if you connect with those, if you listen to those, and then if you consider, right, and build upon the information that these children and youth bring to you, you will certainly have a relevant and efficient action.
Right.
And that's why justice with children is important, because as a judge or as a social worker or as a person in charge of a redressal mechanism, I cannot take an adequate decision which is going to serve what I call the best interest of the child until and unless I hear and consider the views of the child. That's what justice with children means.
Right. So Valerie, if we talk about it a bit more. So even right now, I find police stations and the courtrooms quite intimidating. It's a very natural human.
Yes,
that's just how you perceive these things. But when it comes to children, are they being treated as children? Or they are expected to act like many adults? Because we've also seen cases throughout the world, not just in Pakistan, where the interrogation system, the court system is quite intimidating for the children.
Very.
Psychologists, then we say that there is a scarcity of resources. Psychologist comes way later. What do you have to say about that?
So the fact that children are far too often treated as mini adults. Is really, as you say, a global challenge within the, I would say, when we're talking about justice with children, we're also talking about any type of redressal mechanism. It's not only a court of law. It can be a complaint mechanism. It can be ombudsperson. It can be, filing a complaint with the National Commission on Human Rights, that kind of things. What you call National Human Rights Institution, NHRI. Basically, you ideally, children should not be in contact with the law, all right? When they do, it means there is a problem. But when that problem happens, it should really be child-centric. Adjust to the developmental phases of the child, the cognitive capacities of the child, the maturity. And it should really focus on avoiding secondary trauma and secondary victimization. And for that, you do need an expertise-based justice system and social workforce. And that's what, for example, Pakistan, through its Justice for Children reform agenda, which was launched in December 2024 by the Federal Judicial Academy with the blessing of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. At that time, that's what it's all about. And therefore, Pakistan is currently working towards that, mostly with the support of UNICEF. And with technical partners such as Group Development Pakistan, Justice Project Pakistan. These are the main ones, but you also have organizations like Child Frontiers and other players. What is important is that really we understand that, first of all, we need to try to give the procedure, be it within civil law or criminal law, needs to really ideally avoid bringing children in the court. And when it does, the court needs to be a nice child-centric environment. And, and there is a concept that has been developed with the Federal Judicial Academy. They have an animation for that in there. So there, I think Pakistan is now increasingly understanding that. And we are further working towards that, especially in a context when you have new technologies coming up.
Of course, yes.
So, video linkage, having trained judges, trained lawyers, trained prosecutors, trained police officers, trained social workers, and trained psychologists, is critical. There is a lot of work to do, but the capacity building program, and continuous professional development is an agenda that the Pakistani government has currently taken on very seriously.
They have taken it up very seriously, so we can only hope that there is going to be a fundamental shift in how a child is treated in the courts, in the police station, or how the judges interact with them. Looking forward to that. Definitely looking forward to that.
But Pakistan has developed extraordinary pilot child courts to this end. So within Pakistan, we have example of good practices. What we now need to do is to build upon and capitalize upon those local examples of good practices.
And we just hope that it spreads out to different branches of Pakistan. It's not just, segmentized here in a particular city or the mega cities, because how children feel. So children are seeing, as you said in the beginning as well, you mentioned in the beginning that as an educationist, you got to see a lot that we do not realize. So a child coming to school is maybe facing domestic violence, is maybe seeing the mother getting beaten up by the father, or is going through different social stigmas, or is seeing his cousin, let's say, trapped into drugs or something like that. So they bring a lot to school. But if an educationist is not aware of such needs, if there's no psychological support provision in the schools, you would not be able to diagnose the problem from the beginning.
And also, you also have, child protection actions that are required through the relevant channels. So it does happen through what you call a coordination mechanism and a referral system as well. If as a teacher, I do realize that child is being, for example, sexually abused or is showing signs, I need to have a system which allows me to report, and then qualified people and people with legal jurisdiction have to intervene.
Valerie,
and
do you
start
see that happening in Pakistan?
At this stage, it's very rare. But I have dealt with some cases that were referred by neighbors or by teachers, and that in that case, our job then is to, I would say, mobilize and report to relevant child protection authorities. But it's not systemized enough. There is a lot which is currently in process in Pakistan, which has not reached to maturity. And when I'm saying maturity, I'm thinking essentially official notification and then enforcement with monitoring. So you have what you call child protection case management and referral system technical package in all the provinces of Pakistan that are currently being in the process of being notified or partly notified. It needs to be holistically notified, implemented, and monitored. So we're working on that.
You're working on that. Okay. Because the world is working towards such actions. Okay. If we address another very important aspect that I highlighted in the beginning as well, that is poverty. And this is the root cause that gives birth to a lot of other issues.
Yeah.
So if there's poverty, of course, a father is not going to send his child to school. He would send him to some shop or a garage where he would work and maybe earn some money. Likewise, he would want to marry off the daughter at a very early age so that there's one less mouth to feed. How do you see that situation?
So poverty alleviation is definitely not the only, because child abuse does happen within comfortable, socioeconomically comfortable setup as well. But poverty is certainly an important and essential driver of child abuse and exploitation. It's an additional vulnerability. And that's why poverty alleviation is one of the solutions, not the only one, to prevent child abuse and exploitation from happening. But I think there is also a need to socioeconomic support to families in order to prevent children from falling into conflict with the law or children from being further victimized and exploited is a key strategy in the field of child protection, right? You start from there. And in this end, there are several things. So access to education, but also, I would say, safety nets, social safety nets, which are not poverty alleviation programs such as BISP or what currently Punjab is planning to launch. This program are critical, but that is not enough. I mean, there is again an entire economic vision and world order that need to, for example, paying taxes.
Yes, of
course, is important so that you redistribute, the resources to fund this type of intervention. And then family planning, population, health and population is also very important. Making sure that, for example, by countering child marriage, for example, all right, ending child marriage, you will also ensure that families and women start. So if we say child marriage does not happen, that means that once you are an adult, a woman, only then later on will you get married, and therefore will you start planning a family, etc. The number of years that you're already gaining by not having that person, getting pregnant and having children does make a difference. Of course. The cost of child marriage on an annual basis was really, as per UN Women's Study of 2020, was billions of rupees per year. So you see, we also need to cost, and that is not done appropriately as well. What is the cost of not protecting children, of not promoting gender equality and social inclusion versus the fact of doing so? Already, this is one of the solutions, to alleviate your poverty. Child marriage, child labor does not stop poverty. It perpetuates the cycle of poverty. All right. What I see as an individual is very different from what I see from a state perspective when I have to develop my governance program. Right.
Yes.
So indeed, it's about banking on community systems and structures to, first of all, identify vulnerable families, and then mobilizing local governments, provincial policies and programs to support socioeconomically speaking these vulnerable families. And we are very much aware that this is not going to happen within 48 hours, right?
True.
But this is something that is possible, and we all, as citizens, we must all contribute to it.
True. So it's everybody's responsibility to play a role in this thing to happen. So Valerie, there are different actors involved in such cases. As you've already talked, you have to talk to government, the governance system, then the local institutions come into play, then the mullahs, the Maulvi system.
Religious leaders in general.
Of course. Yeah. So it's quite challenging. What is the biggest challenge, and which according to you is the biggest key influencer in this entire process?
I think when you want to foster change, what is really important, number one, is that you focus on engaging people and not attacking people.
Okay.
That's very important. I think that respectful and healthy communication does wonder.
True.
And especially in the context of Pakistan. I personally never had negative, experiences of communication at community level. On the contrary. And I think that's because I don't come as a lecturer, but as a mother, as a human being, as
someone who is relatable.
Yes.
So if we think that she is someone who can understand us, maybe she speaks our language, she knows our mindset, then of course we would be more inclined towards listening to you, following what you are saying.
And also being able to listen,
True.
Because their perspective matters, and they're usually, and of course, because they are part of the solution. All right. So I think this respectful exchange with community members, who then, when you start the reflective process, at the end of the day, mothers and fathers want the best for their children.
Of course.
All right. It might be, there might be a lack of perspective and awareness, but then when you start that discussion, my experience is that community members are very receptive.
Okay.
It's far more difficult to convince the ones who have power, who are not necessarily interested into that empowerment, and wherever you are. Okay. So there is, I would say the trick is to really find the communication, the message that is going to work according to the target group, because interests are not the same. Dividends are not the same.
True.
And you need to identify that. What is going to interest a government, a teacher, a community member, or a parent? It's not necessarily the same. But empathy, respect, evidence, and constructive dialogue, in my view, is what matters. And then, be professional. Don't come into useless politics. Don't, be seen. I would use a recipe which is not mine, which a lady from Bangladesh once, when I was much younger and when I was seeking advice before setting up an NGO, was telling me, when you do this work, and you have chosen to do this work, work hard, be sincere, and don't cheat. Work hard, don't cheat, and don't lie. These things are very important. I think when you do that, people feel it. People respect sincerity and commitment,
True. And I think that is the only thing that they need. So if you're true to yourself, if you're true to your cause, people would feel that, all that you're doing is for their betterment. You don't have any hidden agendas, because that is also one of the
and we're doing it together. It's not
true.
me doing it and lecturing
so it's
them.
Not us versus them. It's us
together.
Yeah. And that's what the world needs as well. You rightly pinpointed the words empathy, sympathy. This is what the world needs. Everybody has a story that they want to share. Everybody has some problems that they feel the others are unable to understand. And all that they want is just come to our level first. Listen to us. So that listening ear, as you pinpointed, that is extremely important as well. Valerie, you also talk about parental economic empowerment programs, because you believe if you start working from there, maybe the entire, there is going to be a trickle-down effect.
A lot.
So there are vocational training programs. What else do you do?
Yes. So personally, I now, my work as a consultant in that field, essentially to give technical support. So it's all about, building the capacities, first of all, of the people who are, duty bearers, number one, and then, equipping the local actors with, strategies or skills, knowledge, skills, and attributes who will enable them to do the difference, right? Yes. And we also need to document all that, demonstrate why this is working. So there is a lot of training, manual, report writing, or whatever, but this work is important, provided you make sure that it enables you to do something tangible at community level, right? That's what I writing a report for the same of putting a report on the shelf has never
interested me. It's not going to make a difference.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But how do you prepare, for example, an advocacy toolkit so that people are equipped with the relevant knowledge and argument to talk to A, B, C, D? That's something which is useful, all right? Sometimes parliamentarians will tell me, okay, I'm not sure about this problem. Can you explain to me what's happening and why? When you do that, then it helps them build their argument when they want to support a legal reform, etc., etc. But also, the parenting skill, it's different to be a parent. It's difficult to be a parent. I've been a parent. I'm still a parent, even when your children are adults and are married, the reality change and the challenges evolve as well.
True.
And I think it's critical to have more informed people around you who can guide and support you while you share your experience. I wish I had that more as a mother. I can see mistake that I made that maybe I would have been able to avoid if I had that timely and appropriate guidance. So that's, and then I, especially for families that are identified as vulnerable with children at risk, it's so much more efficient to prevent the problem from happening than dealing with the problem once it happens, So that's really something which is critical. And international research shows that basically when you do invest and work on prevention, for example, prevention and family support parenting, not only economic, but also psychological, involving community members and technical experts or practitioners, you actually have much better results into protecting children and preventing them from falling into conflict with the law, for example, or being further abused.
And it requires low cost as well. So prevention, of course, the human cost or the otherwise materials cost as well. Right. So personally, I would like to ask, because it's been 30 years that you're in Pakistan now, around
I'm an old immigrant, yes.
Oh, yes. So you've seen a shift. You've seen different changes, political changes, governance changes, shift in how people used to ask for rights and how they're asking for rights, demanding for rights right now. And a lot of positive changes as well. How do you see that?
So in Pakistan, it's a bit, so first of all, there is a global shift, which is not necessary again. A worrying global shift with a backtrack, efforts to backtrack on certain human rights gains. But then I think you also have unprecedented global mobilization to uphold and promote those rights. All right. So
it goes.
It's important to understand that you have the negative trend and the very positive trend as well. And I think what has been, in my view, characterizing Pakistan is that from the onset, you always had, I always said Pakistan, where in Pakistan you can see the best and the worst, okay, both side by side.
Yes.
And you can decide to whether look at the glass half empty or half full. Personally, from the beginning of my engagement and commitment, even as a child, I have decided to look at the glass half full.
So that's your perspective that matters.
Yes. And I think it's a healthy one.
Yes,
all right.
Of course.
You need hope. And it's fair, because if you look at Pakistan's trajectory, for example, if you look at the policy and legal reform, a lot have been done, towards gender equality, protecting women and protecting children. At the institutional level, a lot has been done. And honestly speaking, Pakistani duty bearers and decision makers are coming forward to try to change and improve. All right. So it does take time. Yes, it's not easy. Yes, you would have always a minority of people who would try to, challenge and remain with the status quo.
True.
Or challenge or remain with the status quo.
Course,
okay,
yes.
You would have both.
Yes.
Right. But it's fine. It's okay. It's also part of a democracy. It's a human nature. Rather than only talking to the ones who are already converted, let's exchange in a respectful and informed manner with the one who disagree with you, and let's then let the democratic game roll over, and hopefully you'll get there. So I think it's, as far as I'm concerned, I've seen a lot happening. Our job is not only to guide as a technical expert, to provide technical support to guide decision makers in Pakistan, but also in other countries to do so. And it can be state actors or CSOs. I do that globally in other countries where sometimes you've got far less than what you actually have in Pakistan, by the way.
Okay.
It's also important to,
highlight
look
that
globally what's
as well.
happening. All right. Sometimes, we keep on complaining here, and then we go to another country and you're like, oh my God.
Pakistan is doing much better.
We're not so bad.
Yes.
Or you have a much better example and you're like, oh, maybe this could work here. Why don't we bank on that? So, this is also the magic of sharing experience, right? And learning all over the globe. But I can tell you that my experience here in Pakistan has really taught me a lot. And it's very funny because when I go to even Eastern Europe or Africa or South and Central America, for example, these are places I've been involved recently professionally. They're like, oh, but you don't seem frightened, for example, all right? You're not afraid of doing this or doing that. And I realized that Well, no, I guess my Pakistani experience has really strengthened my resilience, or people here are brave. So no, why would I be worried? So, it's interesting to compare. You would, I think after 30 years in Pakistan, you would really need a lot to be frightened.
You've seen it all. You're tuned to that.
I wouldn't claim that, but I think it does. I think it changed your perspective about, first of all, learning to let go. Acknowledging that you cannot control everything. I think this is what Asia teaches you in a wise manner. I'm not saying that's in a bad manner. I think it certainly has a sort of wisdom that you don't necessarily have in Europe, where you have to plan, you have to control. It's
a very humbling experience as well.
I believe
you know
so.
that you are not exactly in power. There are other factors that could come into play.
And it certainly boosts, I think, your adaptiveness.
Flexibility.
Flexibility, exactly. And then you have, apart from where you are, but just experiences. So COVID, for example, that was a big shift into learning and adjusting to remote management. All right. So all my point is, life is full of learning experiences, whether you decide to embrace these or you just stay on the side and the train will just continue without you in the wagon.
Without you, you'll be left behind then. So it's very important for you to be able to adapt. And some people take their time. So it's not necessarily you won't be amongst the first ones to shift towards that trend. So maybe you will take your time and eventually at your own pace, you will walk slowly towards that. It's very natural, as we say in change management, when it comes to resistance. A lot of people, they get comfortable with the status quo. So of course, it takes them a little bit of time. Okay, so Valerie, I've noticed that your work towards art and culture, because you're a true believer of integrating that into especially education when it comes to children, because you maybe believe in soft media diplomacy rather than just pushing in the hard facts.
Yes.
How do you see that change when you integrate these elements into some program versus when you try to go all aggressive?
Well, so first of all, aggressivity is certainly not something conducive and that works with children, with anybody, by the way, right? It's toxic and negative energy. It doesn't take you anywhere. Or rather it takes you to the wrong somewhere.
You would retaliate.
Absolutely. But arts and culture. So it's first of all, arts is a language, and it's a language that human beings and children in particular really connect with, embed, and also when you have children who are, for example, neurodivergent or different type of, or children who have experienced trauma, this is really a way to communicate, to reach out to them, and I've seen that a lot in my career. It's helping them being able to produce and express themselves and build their confidence. They're making a drawing and you're like, oh, well done. And then you can start from there. It's really another form of language. Children themselves developed the concept of artivism when I was working with a child rights NGO. And when we did that in terms of advocacy for child participatory legal and policy reform, it was extraordinary. Ministers and lawmakers could understand what children meant when they were presenting their drawing or their paintings, these kind of things. We did engage, I think Samar Minala was also collaborating with us on that, truck drivers and children on that. They had messages and then they were promoting that. It's also part of who you are, your identity. So it's, to me, I've done that with women and young adolescent girls who were victims of traumatic, terrific, tremendous abuse, and who suddenly through arts felt alive again, dignified again. So I think, to me, it's an essential component of the healing and reintegration process. It's being used in some Karachi closed settings where children are detained in conflict with the law. Detention is not appropriate for children. No child should be in detention. But in order to, until we reach zero detention level, I would say, in order to mitigate those effects, some of the authorities in the closed settings in Karachi under the Home Department are integrating art therapy and art programs for young children in conflict with the law. And that's a very conducive exercise for them.
Then also you highlighted that for young girls who especially been through traumatic experience of violence, because even right now, if we talk about Pakistan, cases like spousal
Yeah.
violence, they exist. So what you believe is that the art therapy and these forms of
Mm.
communication, they do have a better impact on
Oh,
women
yes.
to help
Yeah.
them get out of all
It's
these
not
things.
the only element, of course, but it's a critical component of the reintegration, rehabilitation, and healing process. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so what exactly is the course to go about it? Because a lot of women, they suffer,
Hmm.
and a lot of them suffer in silence. They do not know the way out of it.
Hmm.
And by way out, I do not mean just leaving the house or
Yeah,
something.
I
It's just
understand.
their own
Getting-
survival.
Hmm.
How do they make peace? How do they get this mental peace?
So listen, they cannot do it alone if there is no support, right? So
Okay.
we need to make sure that the support mechanism are there. So and again, it's really a holistic approach. First of all, it would be easier to make sure that men or women or any other family members do not abuse these children or these women or this non-binary or transgender persons, for example, or any other vulnerable group, religious minority, person with disability whatsoever. All right.
Yes.
So in order to do that, you do need to change the narrative, to change the curriculum, and show and propose a different social model, right, with different values. And that's where you need to engage everybody: religious leaders, community members, teachers, media, politicians. Again, as I said, you want a peaceful society.
Yes.
Have you looked at the political debates on television?
Oh God. Yes.
All right.
I get
It's
it.
undignified in most of them. So on one hand, we want our children to be well behaved, to be respectful, to be healthy citizens. That's not at all. You can count who can behave and exchange in an adequate and dignified manner on television. I'm appalled when I see what we are displaying. Okay, on television.
True,
all right.
True.
And again, not only in Pakistan.
It's
Look
everywhere.
at the
It's everywhere.
speeches
True,
that
true.
But we need to remember that the moment we enter into certain positions, and including politics and institutions, we do have a huge responsibility.
Of course.
That's something I strongly believe in. When I have young mentorees, okay, I'm telling them, listen, you have a responsibility. This is what it entails. And I do coach them on the entire, how to behave, what to say, what not to say, how to say it, etc., how to write, etc., etc. So this should be everybody's duty number one. The notion of responsibility, civic responsibility, along with civic rights. All right. And then you also need to really look at, what shall I say? I think I've lost your question. Sorry, say it again.
So we were talking about how they can get out of this cycle. How can?
So I think there is a notion of changing the toxic, narrative environment and the toxic patriarchal environment. All right. And then ensuring that these women and men are made aware of, what is a conducive and constructive environment. When I talk about that, I often refer in the context of Pakistan to Khush or Siatmand families, Khandaan, You, at the end of the day, you really feel better when everybody is, when it's happy and when people are healthy at home, rather than when there is fight every day. Okay.
Disagreements.
Exactly. You can disagree, don't get me wrong, but moment
disagree
you have
in a nice manner,
healthy,
that's also,
healthy boundaries to do that.
Yes.
So when you discuss that with people, I have yet to find someone who would disagree with that. So the question is, how do you equip? And that's where, again, parental, but also family support is important.
Okay.
All right. Number one. Secondly, for that woman or any other person who's victim of that violence, what are the safe, confidential, and accessible reporting mechanism? All right. Who would be able to provide support that do correspond to your local mechanism? And and the reason I'm saying that is that we tend to talk about shelters, institutionalization. Institutionalization is very often the last resort that ought to be used, but rather open support mechanism at community level. When I used to do that, I used to identify what I call the positive elements in the family or at community level. You engage with those positive elements, and then they do support. They're able to intervene. You have a Bouzou logic over here.
True.
Use that in order to support the survivor, and then if really this doesn't work, then you need, special,
to go to the next.
To the next level. But that kind of phasing support, which is currently to some extent existing, but not in a gender equality or gender sensitive lens enough. So we need to identify, first of all, what is already existing in your amare riwaj ke andar hamare mohala ke mein, and then build on that and transform it in a more gender sensitive manner. But we need to capitalize on that. All right. And then if really this doesn't work, that's where you need to go for probably relocating the victim, and when you do that, also ensuring that you have legal aid, psychological support, economic support, potential relocation, and again, engaging the family support. In my view, in Pakistan, it's very difficult because the individual in Pakistan is only existing through a family unit or a clan or a tribe
Even
or
the
a community.
identity is based on
Exactly. Much more than in certain other anthropological frameworks. So it's critical to really engage that group as well with the individual and do it in a manner which is dignified and which still takes into consideration confidentiality, which means I'm not going to have a media who's going to write the name, the address, and
even the
broadcast, the picture, whatever that victim. That's terrible. You have laws against that. They're absolutely not being enforced, and nobody is being held accountable. But that's very important for this victim to have. And then train the service providers who need not to be acting in a paternalistic manner. I'm going to teach you. I'm going to tell you what to do. No, you don't know better. You don't know better than the survivor. You don't know better than the victim. Hear them out. And then together, that's where the participatory process is important. Devise a plan, a life project, a reintegration project. And that's, I've done it many times. That's how we were able to have successful reintegration interventions.
Right. So I think this answer was not just useful for this specific segment. In fact, you've taught a lot to everyone. We can take away certain things from that, especially when you talked about the very first step, a dialogue in a respectful manner, that communication. So you can disagree, but there's a way to disagree. And then, of course, the support system, the family system, the community support. So instead of going towards a drastic institutional resort, there are different layers. We all need awareness regarding this. So next time, if something like that happens, you can play a role. So even if you're not the victim, but you see someone going through that, you know how you have to offer your support. So I think it was quite useful for a lot of us. Thank you, Valerie. Your work is all about heavy human interventions. You have to talk about systematic change and involve different institutions and partners and do serious work. But now I'm going to have a very light-hearted conversation with you.
Right.
Enough of that. On a lighter end, you've been to different places, yes. So out of all the places, which one has been the most distinctive in case of a smell or a memory, any sensory feel?
That's interesting. I don't know if it's distinctive. I think each place and each moment and each context often have smells and noises that do impact your memory. My home in France is a lovelier smell that I know of. My mother is very into traditional grandmother's kind of recipes for the smells, lavender, rice powder, that type of things. And even when she comes to visit us in Pakistan, when she opens the suitcase, I remember and my children were, Danushka is there. They knew that the grandmother was there. So for me, that's a very important smell. It's a strength, all right? It's a resilience. It's a strength of resilience. Smell of resilience and strength and love. I think you have also the smell, which is of dirt and blood and which has been there in many cases. Humidity. And then in terms of noise, I've been into war-affected areas outside of Pakistan. You may have the lovely smells, but you have the noise of bombs and, drones and explosion. And I think these are things that certainly hit your memory. And then the spices of the food, people with nothing who would still give you whatever they have left with dignity and respect. And when you were talking about humbling experience, I think you really do.
I wanted to have a light-hearted conversation.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
This also gets to show that all of this is a part of you. So
yeah, I guess
it's easy to talk about these things because after a certain span, you're so professional, you can talk about the solutions, you can talk about the problems, but the toll that it takes on human level, because every expert is also a human being, a human being at heart. So I'm quite touched, and I know it's weird that
I started with my mother nice smell.
But then again, these are a part of you, and you've seen them, and just how it stays. And then with all of that staying, sometimes it gets pushed towards the subconscious side, and then you move on with life. But then there's this little trigger, and all of it comes back. Hats off to you. Hats off. Okay, any particular street food that you liked in any part of the country?
Barbecue. Yeah, okay. Absolutely. The tikka, the namak mandi. Absolutely. My favorite at all times.
Valerie, Urdu kitni achhi hai abhi?
मैं गुजारा करती हूँ जब पाकिस्तानी दोस्तों सुन रहे करिए को माशाल्लाह बहुत अच्छी उर्दू बोलती है और जब मेरे बच्चों मेरे शोवर सुनने के लिए ओह माय गॉड अब की उर्दू बहुत खराब है so I guess it's a matter of perspective.
So from some people the glass is full, from some people's perspective.
And अभी तक ज़रूर कि मैं उर्दू सीख रही हूँ अभी तक लेकिन मैं गुजारा करती हूँ और मैं बोल सकती हूँ.
नहीं बड़ा अच्छा माशाल्लाह से you can comprehend, आपकी comprehension बड़ी अच्छी है और फिर आपने बड़े मुश्किल अल्फाज भी बीच में बोल दिया जैसे मोहल्ले वाला कम्युनिटी वाला जब हम बात कर रहे थे. So yes, you have a grasp over that as well. Okay, what is a simple unexpected moment of joy or laughter you experienced in the middle of a very difficult project that has stayed with you?
Of joy, but also a funny one. So I went on a monitoring visit in southern Punjab to visit young adolescent girls who had been terribly abused by someone else who she had refused marriage with. And it was an extremely poor family. So very difficult because this girl has been disabled and disfigured out of that problem. And they were extremely poor. The family had nothing. And I make it a point to never, ever be a burden on the target groups, any family I visit. But Pakistani people and their generosity and hospitality. And I see this, I think this image is going to remain forever in my life. So I was with the team in the field checking how, the survivor was doing, the teenage girl survivor was doing. And when I enter into this traditional Punjab mud little home, I come and the father, very lengthy, lean, very handsome man, comes here with a lot of dignified and say, we have nothing to give you to say thank you. And I'm like, no, but this is fine. But he said, but this is what I can. And he brings a live chicken. Oh. And this is, you can halal it. And I was like, well, I'm not going to have the live chicken for 4 hours in my car because I had to drive more. But then he was so dignified and that's all he had left to say thank you. And I was, very much disturbed between I don't want to take the last thing that they have and yet I do not want to insult him and be disrespectful. It was very difficult. So eventually I had to take the chicken.
You had to accept it,
of course. I never had live chicken. So you had to carry it. Welcome to real life, and I left with the live chicken in the car. and someone else did halal it, and we shared with people. I think it was the best way to, be honest to the dignity of that person.
Yes.
And they were laughing with me because they could see,
Even they knew that
I think they knew
their
I was a bit,
offering is weird, but then again, the intention behind
Yeah.
it. Right. If you had to convince someone to join this field within 30 seconds, what would be your elevator pitch? Why should they be into this domain, into this field? What's the best part about it?
Make it if you choose it and if you want to make a difference, and be committed and be ready for a roller coaster.
Roller coaster. Okay. What is one misconception about international development work that you'd love to permanently clear up? Because there are a lot of myths. There are a lot of people.
Okay. The first one, it's a Western agenda.
Yeah. It comes from, yeah.
So that's a classical one. And let me clarify that. I am not saying that, there is free lunch, or that there are not certain political agenda that supported this. But as a practitioner, I have never been a slave to donors. Never. Okay. I have only pitched what I believed in, what fit the realities. And it's a universal agenda. At the end of the day, those international treaties are universal values. We need to make the difference between the double standards that are being used when it pertains to the enforcement of the values, but that is different from qualifying these values as Western ones. Do you understand what I mean? So those values are very universal ones. I mean, being good to people, protecting the most vulnerable, working on equality and dignity. It's not a Western thing. And also that sounds very colonialist to me.
Yes.
What does it mean that in the West there is no, I mean, we've seen it. It's not the case. So I think the miss is that we're not talking about a Western agenda. We're talking about universal values. Now, the Western agenda in some cases might be about enforcing this in a double standards, and then let's use those universal values to challenge those double standards.
True.
And that's where I stand. But let's be very clear. We're talking about a universal humanistic agenda that applies to all. West, so-called West, as any other country on the planet.
So very simple. If you're taking care of a child, how is that a Western agenda?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to give you also, I mean, we're talking about, in the Constitution of Pakistan, you have provisions that explain that the state can legislate to support women and children. The Constitution dates back to 1973. The UNCRC pretty much is all about making a special regimen for children. It was, promulgated in 1989. So we didn't wait for the UNCRC to realize that certain things were needed for children, right? So that's what I mean.
The work on those grounds was already happening because it is and I always think, Valerie, that the world is a bigger picture. So it's like a puzzle, and we all are somehow working on different pieces of the puzzle from different parts, from different sides. But then again, the main goal is for the world to be a better place to live in and leave it in a good shape for the future generations to come. Right. In the very end, I'd like to ask for a special message or note that you'd like to leave for the audience.
I think we need to remember that change is possible, that humanity, it's about Hakukul Ibad, all right? It's critical and is the only way forward. And Milker, all together, peacefully, respectfully, we can build a better society. It's not an impossible task. It's a challenging one, but not an impossible one.
बिल्कुल बहुत खूबसूरत तौर पे आपने उसको एंड किया। इसी को अगर रिलीजियस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में कहें तो अल्लाह का भी यही है कि हकूकुल्लाह को बेशक छोड़ दे, लेकिन हकूकुल इबाद के बारे में नहीं माफ़ी होगी. This is very important. So as a community, be mindful of who you're living with, your family members, your community. And Valerie, quite rightly, you have pinpointed that all these things are interconnected, as we said in the beginning. So education, violence, justice system, abuse, extremism, all this is interconnected. So you have to be mindful of one thing, and eventually you'll be able to contribute towards the bigger picture. Thank you once again. Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
This is it from this episode. We'll see you next week with another guest. Till then, take really good care of yourself. Allah Hafiz.